Hello and welcome to Transparenting. My name is Mark Feinberg. I am going to be your host today. And I'm here with the star of the show, Anthony Passero. How you doing, Anthony?
Great, Mark. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Good.
Today's first module, we are going to be talking about powerful parenting paradigms and the perspective that we have as parents and the paradigms that we have. And Anthony, hopefully you're going to help the parents today shift the paradigm and see things from a different perspective. When it comes to our children, there are so many different influences in the world that we have to be aware of as parents. And I think the first one and the most powerful influence that we see out in the world is the music that our children are listening to. And I know you have a lot to say about that, about the music that our kids are listening to. Why don't you share about that
Sure,
now?
absolutely. Appreciate it. So for me growing up as a child and now being a parent, looking back at my life over the last 20 years, music was definitely a major influence in my life. I grew up in a neighborhood and with brothers that were kind of the tough guys in the neighborhood, listened to the tough guy kind of music.
You were a tough guy? Were you a tough guy?
Back then I was really skinny, but I had big brothers, so they protected me pretty well.
So you can be a tough guy if you have big brothers,
Absolutely.
even if you're skinny.
Absolutely.
All right, good to know.
Absolutely.
Good to know.
Definitely. Oh, that's funny. So, growing up, listening to music back in those days, this was 93, 94, 95, was people like Tupac Shakur, Biggie Smalls, Wu-Tang Clan. And most of these songs back then were talking about robbing people, shooting people, dealing drugs, things of that nature. So, when I look back at my life, thinking about before I committed certain crimes when I was a juvenile delinquent, these are the songs and the influences that I had that I would actually go to and listen to get excited and motivated about. Music for me is something that is very emotional and I have a very deep connection with it. Even today, when I hear certain music on the radio, it definitely will cause me to either maybe drive a little faster in my car, maybe get a little teary-eyed, thinking deep about a certain song or a certain connection that it has to my life. So, as a parent now, I look back and I really try to visualize my daughter and the music she's listening to. And what I will say is today's day and age is even a little scarier being a parent than when I was growing up. Growing up as a boy, I think it's a little different than growing up as a young girl in today's day and age. The boys are getting in trouble, listening to bad music, right? Getting motivated. The girls are wearing less, talking crazier, texting, sexting, you name it. And I think a major influence of that in today's day and age comes from the music that they're listening to.
So tell me about, like music videos. When a child that's 12 or 13 or 14 is watching a music video and they're seeing a musician that they look up to, that, at 12 and 13, you're starting to lose some innocence.
Sure.
But now I'm watching, a 20 or a 30-year-old on a music video and they're barely dressed and they're shaking their body. How does that impact our children?
Well, what I could talk about is how it influenced me as a child growing up, because that's really what I could speak clearly on. So for me growing up, getting into trouble, listening to songs by Biggie Smalls, who was a real famous artist that actually was murdered in the streets of LA, right, due to the kind of violence that he was involved with. But, we used to listen to the songs, Give Me the Loot, when we were going to go out and do a robbery. Songs about selling crack cocaine would get us motivated to go out and start our shift, in New Jersey when we were running the streets, selling drugs to, you name it, we were selling it. All of this, thinking back, there's obviously a lot of key elements that are involved with that. And it's important to understand that it's just not music alone, that it's a lot of other influences. But for me as a person, and now listening to the music that's out there in today's day and age, music, violence, gangs, drugs, sex is really something that we should take a close look at as parents.
Yeah, that's a good point, Anthony. And the music that our children are listening to, sometimes, or oftentimes, the music has subliminal messages built into it. I think about the shootings at Columbine years ago and those song lyrics and how they influenced those shootings. And, how powerful are lyrics in these songs?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's it's really scary to think about that something that you're hearing from somebody that you never met, but you kind of just like the way it sounds and looks up to, can have such a major influence on your life. As a child, and when you're into that, you're getting, turning 12, turning 13 years old. You're correct. You do start to lose that innocence, right? You start to take some risks. You start to, lose sight of reality a little bit, right? Because as a child, you're the ultimate innocence. And
Sure.
then when you become a teenager, it's kind of like you're entering the real world for the first time. And this is a scary world, and it's a scary place. And for me, it's scary being a parent of a daughter who's now 8 years old, and on a daily basis trying to put her in environments that cause her not to make the same mistakes that I made as a child.
That's powerful. Now, for the parents that are watching and viewing, let's help them to make a paradigm shift right now.
Sure.
Does that sound good?
Absolutely.
Like, when would now be a good time?
Absolutely.
Now, right? So, if a parent is watching their child holding their iPhone or their music player with their earbuds on, what can a parent do to become more aware of, what their child is listening to?
Sure. I think it's important as a parent to really relate to your child, because in today's day and age especially, the parent probably knows the least amount, right? And the kids listen to their parent the least out of all their friends that they have, and their parents know nothing. I think it's important for a parent to relate to a child and explain, growing up, kind of being a little vulnerable with your child and explaining to them when you were growing up.
And we're going to talk about that in the modules ahead, aren't we?
Absolutely.
Good,
Yeah, we're going to go into
good.
detail about that
Yes.
for sure. But relating to your child about music and seeing what they're listening to, not for the purpose of correcting them, not for the purpose of grounding them for the kind of music they're listening to, but more so for understanding why they like the music, what they think's cool about it. Because what we're doing at that point is building a profile for your child so you could truly understand them.
Yes.
The same way that you try to and want to understand your wife, right? Or your wife before you met her when she was just your girlfriend. And you really wanted to learn all the things about her and what
Yes.
excited her, what got her pissed off. And you can go on for days about that.
I'm
right?
smiling about all
Yep.
those things right now. I'm thinking about all those songs I used to listen to, thinking about her. Yes.
Sure, absolutely. So, when I look back and I think of that, for me, I'm going to make it a really strong effort when my daughter's 12 years old to not get her in trouble for what she's listening to or why she's listening to it, but more just to understand why she's listening to it.
That's good. So this isn't a beat down.
Correct.
This isn't about beating our children into the ground or
Correct.
making them wrong for who they are. This is about having the awareness as a parent.
Sure.
Am I hearing you correctly? This is about having the awareness as a parent to be able to communicate with my son or my daughter so that I understand what they're doing, why they're doing it, what's influencing them, and how I can best contribute to their life once I have that understanding. Correct?
Absolutely. Correct.
So, for example, let's say I hear a song that my son is listening to, and the lyrics are a little scary. Would it be appropriate to print up the lyrics and then have a sit down with my son and kind of go over the actual lyrics with him?
Absolutely.
Is that something that you would do or that you've done in the past?
Absolutely. It's something I would recommend for your child to really understand what they're listening to. Because I think a lot of times in today's day and age, it's more of, because it's part of a song and it's catchy and it sounds good, people are not even really listening to the words.
Yeah.
And there's times today I listen to songs that are on the radio with no censorship. And I say, this is incredible that they're talking about these certain things where a child, a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 14-year-old are sitting there and listening to these words. So it's important to really understand the music and why they're listening to it and explain that in detail to your children.
You're so right, Anthony. I had taken my 2 children to an Usher concert. So we're in Fort Lauderdale at the BB&T Center, and Usher comes out. Now the kids at the time, they're 11 and 10.
Wow.
Right? And they love Usher, and they're listening to Usher music, and I never really listened to it. Well, there's a moment in that performance where they bring a bed out onto the stage. And now Usher's on top of one of his dancers, and I'm thinking, how did I just let this happen? That I would take my 10 and 11-year-old to a porn show.
Parent of the Year award, right? That's what you're thinking.
I'm thinking, yeah, I'm up for the Parent of the Year award. You know, I'm up for, you know, being lynched, actually. So just that unawareness about Usher's music at that time, or about his performance, bringing a mattress and a bed, rolling that out up on stage, and then doing a love scene on top of one of his dancers, really freaked me out.
Okay. It's incredible. It's a great point. Absolutely.
Yeah. Any final thoughts about this topic on music?
No, I think we've covered most of it. I would just like to close and say, you know, that as a parent, you know, being a parent, there's no book on it, and I'm not here by any means trying to say that I'm a great parent or the best parent in the world.
Yes.
And I think I probably should have started with that. I'm just talking about my life as a child growing up, for the decisions that I made and some of the things that maybe should have been done a little differently, that would have stopped me from going through the trials and tribulations that I had.
Good. That's good.